Given the x-intercepts for the graph of a quadratic function, write a possible formula for the quadratic function in factored form. So referring back to our 3.06 notes, we know that factored form is when there's the parentheses, and the x-intercepts are what we get after we solve each of the parentheses or factors set equal to 0. So I know that these have to be the opposite, right? Because if we have x plus 7 as a factor, it became x minus 7 as an x-intercept. So we're going to do the same here. So if one of our factors is 0, that's something we haven't seen before. It means that it's probably going to look something like this. And that's because if we wanted to put parentheses around it, we could just set x equal to 0, and then whatever this is equal to 0 and solve. So sometimes you're going to get polynomials or quadratic polynomials that only have two terms. For example, if we had something like 2x squared and 4x, you could factor out an x, right, as well as a 2. And do something like 2x plus 4 equals 0, right? So there's just a lot of different scenarios where you could potentially not have two factors, but instead, well, you have two factors, I guess, but they don't have to always be in the same format where it's x plus or minus something twice. So then for 3, this one's a little bit easier. We know how to deal with this. It's positive, so then we know it needs to be -3. So this could be the factors for these x-intercepts. Part B is x minus 1 and x plus 1. So for the negative one, we know that this needs to be x plus 1. And then for the positive one, it needs to be x minus 1. For -5 and 10, it'll be x plus 5. And for positive 10, it'll be x minus 10. For 1/2, I'm going to try and be a little more creative. Yes, you could put x minus 1/2. That's fine. And that is acceptable. Typically, that's not what we see, though. Usually, we get fractions when there's a coefficient in front of the x. So I'm going to do 4x minus 2. So I'm going to show you why that works. If we set 4x minus 2 equal to 0, we would add 2 on both sides and get 4x equals positive 2. Divide by 4, x equals 2/4, which can be reduced to 1/2. So that's totally possible. Another one you could do, if you've already kind of figured out the format, that it has to be the denominator goes first and the numerator goes second. It could be 6x minus 3. It could be 10x minus 5, anytime you know that you're going to be able to get that 1/2, which is a little easier to work with than other fractions. And then for the other part, which is way more straightforward, the positive 4, we could just write x minus 4. Also totally fine, but if you wanted to be creative, you could also think, okay, if the numerator is the second number and right, so we could do x, do 16 and 4, and if we set that equal to 0, we would add 16 on both sides, and then we get 4x equals 16, and then we would divide by 4 and get x equals 4. But again, x minus 4 is also perfectly fine. There's just a lot of ways to do this if you want to play with fractions and practice your numeracy skills with fractions.